Boom. All right. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads. I'm your host, Quan. I go by Q, of course, where being mediocre is a choice. And you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. And on this episode, I am George. I am joined by a guest named George, and I think his story is going to be very impactful for all of you. And I know every guest has an impactful story. It's not to say they're my previous guests and future guests, their stories are not impactful. It's just to say that every time I talk to somebody and you get that experience to hear their story and their experiences, it hits different, And I say this often when I do my intro, I know, but it's just to to give credit to those who've been on the show, but also to give credit to the who's currently sitting on front of me on the show and watching. But without that being said, George, I would like you first just introduce yourself, let the audience know a little bit about yourself, and we'll get right into it.
All right. My name is George P. Brooks. I am the CEO and founder of a nonprofit called Mendo Association. We focus on Black male mental health, fighting recidivism, and promoting healthy fatherhood. And on my way to that journey, I went through a lot. Diagnosed with mental illness at about age 7. Grew up with that. Dealt with childhood obesity, weight loss surgery, divorce trauma, custody issues. And I guess in a way it was a trauma looking back at it, but we'll get to that. Public speaker, looking to do what I can to destigmatize mental health in the Black male community because I see the effect that it's having on our community. And also, my most important role is that of a father. So that's what I am first before I'm anything. I'm a father. So that's why I do what I do, and that's the most important thing to me in my life are my kids.
That's awesome. And how many kids do you have?
I have 2 boys and 3 stepkids, so
Two
5 in all.
boys. Okay, man. And the stepkids, are they a mixture of boys and girls or all girls?
2 girls, 1 boy. They're all grown.
All
I
grown.
have
Okay.
and I only have one minor left of my 14-year-old. So
Okay. All right. All right, man. I have two daughters myself, and I aspire to have boys, of course, but
right.
we will see what the good Lord blesses us with here in the future, hopefully in the future, of course. But that being said, kind of just diving right into it, kind of something you mentioned is, you've dealt with you had a lot of trauma in your life, a lot of things that have occurred in your life that kind of helped in a way for you to be the person you are today. So
Right.
that allows and helps other people, especially. But I kind of want to go to the beginning. So, what was the beginning like for you? How did you mentioned at age 7, that's when you were diagnosed with a mental illness. So I don't know if that's the beginning or if there was before that, but what's the beginning for you? What was that like? How
That
did this all come to fruition?
that's pretty much what started me along this path.
Mm.
Grew up 2 parent household, 3 sisters, myself, mom and dad, and I guess the beginning of it was about age 7. I began to notice that I didn't process my emotions the same. My reactions were different. My moods were different. And my mother and sister noticed too. So they were like, they weren't of the mind of a lot of Black families at that time where we ran from our issues and we were running from mental health. My folks were like, hey, if there's something wrong, deal with it.
Mm.
Get on top of it, deal with it, address it, be accountable for it. This is your thing. So they never shied away from taking me to therapy. They never shied away from taking me to a psychiatrist or for me taking medication. Now, there were certain economic and other social factors that made my care interesting. But that's when it really started about age 7. And I was officially diagnosed with bipolar at about age 25.
Mm.
At that point, they didn't diagnose people under 18. So my first son was a year old. He went through that's when I was officially diagnosed. That was a really rough time for me. He was a year old. I was under a lot of pressure. So everything kind of manifested itself. Got through that, got my official diagnosis, got started on medication. And when my son was age 7, he was diagnosed with bipolar.
Oh wow.
So that scared the stew out of me because I knew what he would have to deal with. But it's been a journey ever since. He's 19 now, and I've had custody of him. But so much of my energy when you're raising a child with a mental illness, especially if you have one of your own, it's exhausting
Yeah.
because you're dealing with the ups and downs, you're dealing with the moods, you're dealing with the medication management, you're dealing with the police getting called because they're teenagers on top of having a mental illness.
Oh yeah.
It pretty much killed my relationship I was in. It was hard. It was hard, but that's part of being a dad because being a dad isn't easy.
Yeah.
Being a dad should be fun if you're doing it right, but it ain't
Yep.
supposed to be. It's simple but not easy. I
Yeah.
think that's the thing about fatherhood. Fatherhood is very, very simple, but it's not easy. And I think this is where a lot of times we guys mess up, especially when we first find out we're going to be a father for the first time. That initial, whoa, really? And I think sometimes we overthink it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, sometimes dads are hard on. I mean, being a black father is not an enviable position to be in. And I tell you why. With my son, I'm originally from Memphis, and I don't know if this is a Memphis thing or whatever, but everywhere I went somewhere with my son, I was always disrespected. Where's his mother? Well, and I never understood that, and they let me know that there's a real war on black fatherhood. If I take my child somewhere, I'm getting asked where's the mama, but you're not going to ask the mother where's the father. Not
Right.
unless the child's acting up.
Hmm.
So we have a double standard in our community as far as the perception of black fathers and what our roles are. Our roles is being diminished. We have this toxic femininity going on now that women say, I don't need a man. My child don't need a father. I'm a mother and a father, which is utter bullshit. Excuse my language. You're not the mother and the father. No more than I can raise a daughter and say I'm mother and father. You're
Right.
not. So I mean, I just think there is a war on black fatherhood by certain people. I think a lot of it is spurred on by the media, by things that people listen to, by social media, by this toxic femininity, by this boss woman attitude, and all it's doing is filling our jails full of our young men and women. It's trash and it's detrimental. And that's and I'm speaking on that because that's what's current right now going on that I'm dealing with.
Hmm.
In my public speaking and advocacy work, I talk to a lot of fathers, and that's what's going on. Fathers are now starting to stand up and fight for their rights, and fight for visitation, and fight for custody. But you have this segment of society that was started right after when segregation started. Segregation didn't do anybody any good. It really
Hmm.
didn't. Not us. If nothing else, it set us back. So there was now this thing of keeping the fathers out of the home, especially for our social programs. If a man was in the home, you couldn't get help. So you had a lot of women that were forced to kind of step up and kind of have to do more than really what they were supposed to do, or what they're entitled to do, or what they should be doing, because a child needs two parents.
Yep.
If you single parenthood is not something that should be endeavored into by choice.
I
If you
agree.
find yourself in circumstances where you're a single parent, that's one thing. But to choose to be a single parent, to me, is foolish. And I guess I'm just on this because I hear people saying it all the time. If you're choosing to be a single parent, that's selfish.
I agree.
And not I'm not even on the mindset of a mother and father. I don't care if it's two guys. We got two parents and they both love the child and take care of them. That's all I care about. But I just see a lot of things lacking when I see single mothers raising black boys. Not saying they not doing it, not saying they're not doing a good job, but I just see something lacking, and that's why I do what I do as far as men's mental health, because we have to return the man back to the household. If not back to the household literally, back to the role that they hold in the family of being the leader and the stabilizer, and not just the provider. See, men only have value as long as you provide. As long as
Hmm.
you provide for people, everybody loves you.
Yep.
The minute you slack up or say no, you have no value. We need to change that as a society, especially as black folks.
I agree with everything that you said, because and I think, and sometimes we can be apologetic, and I want to tell people, especially yourself, like there's no reason to be apologetic, especially of our beliefs, and something we should stand on and be able to shout from the rooftops the impact and the importance of men and fathers being involved in their kids' life. I mean, if you have to unfortunately go through a divorce, child still needs their father, and
Mm.
you even mentioned it kind of going backwards, right? Where you mentioned, in back then, where during the Civil Rights Act, segregation, in the 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson passes the Civil Rights Act, but then in 1968, I don't know what the exact act is called, but it's known as the Welfare Act, right? And where that it promotes fatherless homes. And
Right.
prior to the 60, I would say the 60s, I don't know the exact number on the top of my head, but prior to the 60s, when it came to that foundation of family, um, uh, blacks or African Americans, we were outpacing. white families or other races families or race of families within the United States as far as
Right.
having both mother and father in that home. But then it changed, like I said, in 1968. That was the catalyst of the change, and then from there, by the time you got to the 90s, you had a lot of at that point where single moms were raising their kids because most of the men, like you mentioned, were incarcerated. And then, of course, in the 90s, sorry, I'm a huge history buff, so I know a lot of this. But in the 90s, that's where you have the three strike. You had the three strike
Right.
rule by what was it, Bill Clinton, and where three strikes and you're out. And when they implemented that, keep in mind when they implemented this law, they would consider other things. I think it was other felonies as a strike. So it
Right.
didn't start fresh. You have three strikes. It was you could have two felonies on your record, for example, and they say, boom, you have one more, and then that's it essentially. And so
Right.
anyway, that's kind of history of it, and I can respect so much what you said because I think it is important, and a lot of it can, and most of it I think can also stem from the fact of mental illness, where as Black men we have always been taught, or it's stereotypical within our culture to say, hey, you can't. You're a black man, you can't have mental illness, you don't have mental illness, you don't have mental issues, that's a white problem, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
this is not about a race thing, but this is kind of what a lot of the things I would say that as for a lot of us men have been taught is you don't have anything wrong with you, you're just a young man, but as soon as you grow
Yeah.
up you'll grow
Tough
out
it
of that.
up,
Yep.
tough it out. Don't cry about it. And that's nothing but a slave mentality. The mentality was indoctrinated upon us back in slavery.
Hmm.
Even the separation of the family back when they went through the Caribbean along the slave trade, that's where they separated the men from the families,
Yep.
especially if you were a man with military training. I mean, this is all. This is all. A lot of it was things that were propagated and kind of foisted upon us as a diaspora. But I guess my thing is that now we're at the point where we have, you know, equal access to information.
Yeah.
We can now produce our own resources. We can do things to still be in that mindset of this a white guy's problem. Black folks don't deal with mental illness. Mental illness is not real. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, if you still thinking like that, then you so locked in that slave mentality. Nothing I can say is gonna help you.
And I agree, because I think that this mental illness, it impacts everybody, or I won't say
Right.
everybody, but well, I will say that it impacts everybody in some.
Directly or indirectly.
Right.
Yeah.
Some are very egregious and very impactful, and some are minuscule and not to the point where someone might not need to seek help, but still
Right.
it impacts people in many different ways. Kind of, you mentioned about the boss, or that boss woman mentality, that this thing where I think it's almost like a bug where these single women predominantly are preaching this single life, or in this, or single mother life especially. And it's so interesting because they're preaching these things, and you're like, okay, hold on, it's important for this child
Right.
to have a man or that father in their life. It's important for both kids to be loved and feel loved, and let them know they're loved. But it's promoted by, like you mentioned, the media, where you have artists like Meg Thee Stallion, Cardi B, Spicy Red, all these.
Propagate, and I'm gonna say this on them: they propagating trash.
Yeah.
They killing our culture. They killing our community. You ain't. I don't listen to that garbage.
Mm-mm.
Uh, that's what's wrong with our society. That's why we got so much stuff wrong. We listen to that trash. Yeah, they make their money, do what they do. That's fine, but it's garbage.
Yeah.
A lot of what's in hip hop is killing our communities. It's trash. It's
Yeah.
garbage. It's either talking about fornicating, dealing drugs, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So
And
this just be, I mean, I guess as far as fathers, we need to start having some real discussions on some people and start saying some stuff that people don't like, because we have to get people uncomfortable to get them to listen.
yeah.
See, if I came across, especially as in terms of fatherhood, just based off the things that I've been through, raising my children, it made me into a lion.
Yeah.
Because when you're a father and you have people for no other reason other than you being a black male questioning your ability to be a father when you know you're a good father, that does something to you. And especially when your kids have had challenges and you've had to be there and you've had to deal with this. I'm a staunch advocate for fatherhood, healthy fatherhood, good fatherhood, but fatherhood nonetheless. all this stuff with these women, listen to all this Meg the Stallion, all that garbage, all that trash, and then come home think you're gonna have a relationship and raise a child in the right way. Which you are what you take in.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to all that stuff and then you wonder why your relationships are a certain way, then that should tell you something.
Yeah.
But I guess my main point is that what I feel is that there is a war on black fatherhood. It is trying to get better, but so much of it is propagated by this toxic femininity, and it's in the music, and it's in the movies, it's in our culture. Men are this, men are that, men are no. Okay, even if that's true, if you got a baby that ain't no good, you made that choice.
Yeah.
Don't get mad at him. You knew he had kids. You knew he was trifling when you laid down with him because he had some money in a nice car. You went ahead and busted down.
Yeah.
Now you got a kid with him. That's your choice.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
We choose who we lay down with. You choose who you propagate with. And
Yeah.
this is one of those situations. You chose that. So you can't get mad and say, well, he's not a good father, but you knew he wasn't a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
You saw that beforehand. And it's just like, at what point are we gonna start being accountable and saying, you know what, this, the way we've been doing things, or I made some mistakes, so how can I make them right?
Yep.
But father, I think that right now is the time for fathers to start fighting for custody of your kids more. Make sure you fight for visitation. To me, co-parenting begins while y'all still together.
Yeah.
As soon as you find out that girl pregnant, you need to have a co-parent plan for when this stuff don't work out.
100%.
Already have you a lawyer, have you a family attorney, have this stuff on the go, because I don't care if you married to the woman. I don't care how long you married. Anything can go wrong.
Yeah.
Anything can go wrong in a relationship. And just even if you're in a committed, good relationship, co-parenting together and all that, there's still going to be conflict, because there may be an issue where you feel this way about the child rearing and they may feel the other. But, I guess I'm just speaking with a sense of urgency, because I work as a mentor
Yeah.
at an alternative school. And you can tell the kids that don't have fathers at home. You can tell the kids that they don't have strong parenting at home. It comes across as evident.
Mm.
And I know if I can pick that up in 5 minutes, society is going to pick up on it. Because one thing I tell my sons all the time, no matter what you do, you're being sized up.
Yeah.
You walk into a room, you're already being sized up, you're already being judged. So do everything you can to give yourself an advantage to where you can go in the room and feel confident and not have to worry about that. But a lot of that is in child rearing. And a lot of us parents are selfish. We are. If you have kids, if you have young kids and you don't have the latitude to move, then the club is not for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to the club and your kids at home.
Oh.
Don't do that. If you're a father, don't go to the strip club and your kids at home. And spend the time. You got time to catch up on this stuff later. Right time, at that point in your life, the time for that is over with.
Yeah.
And I hear people say all the time, I still need a life. You need to have a different life.
Well, it's crazy
Because I've seen other parents do that, and it's never gone well.
well,
So
and yeah, because I think it's crazy that the fact that like, well, a lot, parents will say that thing where it's like, oh, I'm still me. I need a life. I still have a life. And it's like, yeah, you just have a life with kids now. Your life is different. What you need to do, what you do for fun is no longer about your fun. It's about what are your kids see as fun, because you're
right,
making these memories, especially with with people who, if you grew up in a two-parent household, you're fortunate enough to grow up in a two-parent household, right? Saw how your parents took time out of their day to spend time with you, not necessarily you, but you in general, with you, and devote the time that they could have, spending sitting watching in front of the TV or hanging out with each other or going and spending their money somewhere else. They spent it with you. So why wouldn't you replicate that and give your kids that same treatment? It's absurd to me to think that, so I'm active duty military, and I know of a lot of single moms
right,
and a lot of single dads, and the single dads, they're fighting for custody right now, fighting for it. And the single moms, they, some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, I will notice these things where they will be like, they'll pawning their kids off to this daycare or whatever the case might be, and they say, hey, or this babysitter say, I'm going out tonight. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going out tonight? Your place should be in the home. You fought tooth and nail to have the only the ability to have this kid and take him or her away from their father. Potentially some situations are different, and you're that willingness just to say, well, I don't want to spend my Friday night with them. I want to spend my Friday night going out. That's a crazy absurd thought to me. But my question to you would be, as black men, do you think we are not taking onus or the responsibility as much as we should? It's easy for us to have this conversation, right? And I'm not saying that you yourself are not, but there are a lot of others out there. Do you think that they are not taking their responsibility seriously, or not taking the onus and accountability? Say, I need to be in this child's life. I need to take step up, but there's like, it's socially acceptable, so why not?
Well, basically, in their regard, I mean, there are just some bums out there.
Hmm.
I mean, they're not the majority,
Right.
but they're just some bums out there. I mean, just like some bum women out there. But I think we're starting to see more accountability from fathers, because I think a lot of guys, especially in my generation, about 46 or whatnot, they're realizing what it was like for them coming up. And I think with Gen Xers, there was a start to look more about our childhoods and things that we went through coming up. This week, you notice our kids are a little bit more empathetic and more in touch with their feelings than we were, because we tried to raise them that way. But I do think that men need to be more accountable. I tell men all the time, if you once you find out that girl pregnant, you need to have a co-parent to plan to have you a family attorney on deck. Real talk,
Really?
because you want to negotiate in times of peace, not in times of war.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when things get heated, that's when you really have the child being adversely affected, because emotions are involved. The woman's highly emotional. She gonna turn the screws if she can.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, not all the time, but a lot of times, yeah, because they're hurt, their feelings are involved. But what you have to do, you have to have a plan. If you're in a relationship and you decide to make that choice of procreating, y'all need to sit down and be like, look, we all love each other right now. I'm all happy, but what if things don't go the way we want them to? We need to have a plan. Who gonna pay this? Who gonna visit this? Where's the child gonna live? Have all that worked out on the front end.
I think,
And men, go for custody.
yeah.
See, a lot of reasons why we haven't been doing it, because like when I went through my divorce, I was browbeaten and afraid and beat down by black society and black media, thinking that men didn't have a right to their kids,
Oh,
that the woman will always get custody. No, they won't. That's not true. If you go into court and you ain't been beating nobody and you ain't just been acting no damn fool, and you go into court and you truly earnest about seeing your kid, 9 times out of 10 you will get treated fairly, depending on the judge. But we have to do it more to make it more commonplace.
yeah.
But I'm all for men going for visitation. If you're not with your woman and you don't have 50-50 custody, why wouldn't you have 50-50 custody? Which is, even if he stayed with her primarily, assert your rights as a father. Since when did black men become so weak? We afraid to fight for our rights. We can sit up here. We can do all this stuff that's nonsensical, but when it comes to our rights and our health and our well-being and that of our children, we keep falling short. What kind of fathers can we expect to be if we don't take care of ourselves as men, emotionally, physically, socially, financially? That's what we're not doing. And that's why we're seeing our kids do the things that they're doing. I look at millennials, and they're so far advanced from us in terms of being able to process their emotions and technical and all this great stuff, but they didn't get their foundation. Their two-parent household, it makes a difference.
Hmm.
And even if you're not together, you can still two parents. I'm divorced from my ex-wife. She's an excellent co-parent.
Yeah.
Have no issues out of her. She has no issues out of me. We co-parent our son, goes beautifully. It took a lot to get there, but I had to fight. I had to go and get an attorney and fight for custody and fight for my rights, because like I said, we as men are taught to do that.
Yeah.
We just are not.
I think it's a lot of it's the lack of teaching of emotional intelligence. I think,
Right.
we, you know, it, our fathers and their fathers before them, and so on and so on, such, right? It wasn't really till, like you mentioned, millennials, that this emotional intelligence, this really started to being developed and really kind of being taught. And
Right.
parents had they started, you know spanking their kids less and more figuring out what's going on with them emotionally. But then now we're at this point where we're trying to figure out if something is going on with the kid, whether the kid's screaming, whether the kid doesn't want to get in the bath, whether the kid doesn't want to do what they're told. It's the parent is now still saying, what's going on, little Timmy? Tell me, let me figure out what's going on emotionally, rather than finding that balance to say, hold on, no. Sometimes kids are just going to be bad, and they need to get
Yeah.
their butts whooped, and that's just being very
Sometimes you
frank.
just got to get that switch or get that belt out on them.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when parenting, there are times when I need to sit down with my kids and talk to them and find out what's going on. And there's times we might have to take a day out, go get some yogurt or something, talk. But there's sometimes, son, just do what I tell you.
Yeah, and that's
And so many parents now don't understand how to have that line and separate it between being a millennials parents and being an old school parent.
yeah. Well, I think,
And I tell my kids all the time, sometimes you just have to shut up and do what I say. You know.
and that is, and the thing is, I think, when the newer generation of parents, they hear, or they say, someone say, hey, somebody just got to spank their kids, they get this fear of like, I'm abusing my kid, right? Because they themselves will even say like, I was abused, and it was like, hold on, you were not abused. There's a difference between getting punished and someone physically abusing you. But people like to say this form of punishment is now physical abuse, and that's what they equate it to. And so when they equate it to this physical abuse, they're like, oh, well, I was abused, so I'm not going to abuse my child. When the reality is, hey, no, your kids need punishment. Their
Right.
kids require, like you mentioned, kids require rearing, and it sets them on this path, and it allows them to understand the between right and wrong. Because as parents, that's what one of our
Right.
main purposes in life is, to help direct our kids and guide our kids to say, hey, this is what is right, this is what is wrong. We built that foundation when they're young, and by the time they're 16, 17 years old, you don't have to worry about your kid going out drinking, getting drunk, and getting behind the wheel of a car and saying, well, I can do whatever I want, damn the consequences, and potentially hurting themselves and somebody else. And so,
Right. Because yeah,
and I,
because I found like really, it's funny that you bring that up because you mentioned age 16, 17 and up. My theory is about age 15, you're pretty much kind of done at that point with the raising
yep.
because at 15, that's when their puberty is locked in. That's when they're kind of who they're going to be.
Hmm.
It's up to the rest of the world and society and their own experience to rear them further.
Yeah.
So I just noticed when my kids hit about 15, that's when I noticed, okay, this is different. They're starting to be more independent. They're starting to develop more their own opinions. So we really don't have a lot of time to raise our kids.
Nope, we do not.
And we don't really raise them. You know what my son told me? He said one time, he said, Dad, it's never what you say, it's always what you do.
Hmm.
He said, you can tell me every day, don't do this, but if I see you do it, that's gonna flip the switch.
Yeah.
He said, you lead by example.
That is.
And that's one thing too. So a lot of times we spend too much time talking to our kids and trying to instill stuff in them instead of just letting them be around us and see how we move.
Yeah.
I just learned to just shut up as a father, just be with my kids. Let them watch how I talk. Let them watch how I do. Whatever I want to, instill into them, just embody it. If you want your kid to be honest and hardworking, then you be those things.
Yeah.
You can't be up smoking crack and fornicating in front of your kid and say, well, go to school. It doesn't make sense because we all follow examples.
Yeah.
We don't follow words. We're not educated like that.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely incumbent upon, fathers to lead by example too.
It is.
Lead by example. Lead your communities by example.
And so I wanted to ask, you kind of mentioned it, so you and your ex-wife, you guys are separated, but you guys are doing the co-parenting thing. How long did it take for you to get to that point where you could say, where you guys could, you could confidently say we are successfully co-parenting?
You mean get to the point where I could stand it?
Yeah, right. Right.
Because, you have to realize those emotions are involved
Hmm.
too. But it took about a year after the divorce
Okay.
to really get to where it was a smooth system. I mean, it was always good, but I think enough things had matriculated, enough time had passed where we were able to get over our own ego and our own thing and keep it about our son. So that's something that took about a year, but it took a lot of effort because I've been in therapy for 6
Yeah.
years. That's one thing us black men don't do, get in therapy,
Mm-mm.
and then wonder why our lives are screwed up. But therapy helped make a lot of things possible for me. I'm a staunch advocate for people being in therapy. whether you think you need it or not, especially young people nowadays, because they have so many external factors to deal with that we didn't.
Yeah. And so that you yourself were working on it. And it's not to say that she wasn't, but as you mentioned, pride is and egos are involved in when, especially when two people are going through a divorce, and it seems there's a lot of people trying to get back at each other, and it's like jabs. It's almost like it's just like a small little knife. You know what I'm saying, that they just slightly
Right.
every so often just gonna jab it in your gut to let you know that I'm still here. And it's not to say that's what your ex-wife did, but nonetheless, do you think that while you were working on yourself, there is a requirement that she herself had to be working on herself as well? And was she going through that counseling phase, or counseling herself to get that assistance or help that she possibly needed?
She kind of did her own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just focused on what I could do at the time and what my process looked like and my healing, and I just left it in God's hands as far as handling, her handling with her part of it. But evidently, she's been able to handle it. I don't know how. I did not ask. It's not my
Right.
business. But we're at a point now where the communication is good. Our son is doing excellent, and we talk a couple times a week. Hey, how you doing? He's good. It's good, but it took a lot of work to get
Right.
here. And it's so funny when I hear people say, "I'll never get along with my ex." You know what? If you think that, then you don't have a goal of where you should be. You should be at a role where you can co-parent, not necessarily be best friends.
Yeah.
So.
And I always try to tell people, I don't encourage divorce or separation. I always strive for, if you guys could work things out together, great, by all means try to do that. But that's not everybody, and that's unfortunate that it's not everybody can do that. But what sometimes what I'm seeing, and from especially from the younger soldiers that I'm dealing with, is because they're still young and their spouse is still young. They haven't really got to know each other in deeper, rather than just surface level things. And so when a kid is introduced into the mix, and then you start having those deep conversations that they realize they should probably be having before, but now they're having them because they found out they're pregnant, they see a difference in opinions and the beliefs, and then that's where the breakdown starts, and then it becomes resentment, and then it grows and grows and grows, and then it gets to a point where you're like, I can't stand this person who I'm supposed to call my wife, or I can't stand this person who I'm supposed to call my husband, because we disagree with each other completely. But you never had that, they never took the time to take away the physical aspect of the things, right? That's, we're all attracted to physicality, and I understand that's human nature. But mentally, where are we at? Where's this other individual at? Where's this other person at that you are trying to get with, that you want to be, whether you want them to make them your wife or you want to make them your husband? Where are they at? Where are you guys at on these really hard topics that a lot of parents had to figure out how to have this conversation later on in the game, and they're struggling because they're like, dang, I never knew that. And I had a soldier, and I told him once, he was telling me, he was like, yeah, I really like this girl, and it's great. And I said, well, hey, let me ask you a question. And I said, let me ask you a question. He said, I was like, have you slept with her? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, how long have you known her? He's like, well, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I said, listen, man, I am, you're a grown adult. You're going to do whatever you do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. However, as a believer myself, and I don't believe that you should be having sex prior to marriage. I think that if you guys, and it's not to say that you need to be in that phase for years, right? But if you dedicate it to 6 months of really getting to know this person, I'm talking having the hard conversations and whatever that looks like, and figuring out, really learning about this individual in which you're trying to marry, you want to marry, you want to, become one with. For 6 months, if you did that, and then say 7, 8 months later, you come back and say, yeah, I'm about to marry this individual. And it's like, yeah, we none of that, but we really got to know each other. I believe you'd be more successful than some of those couples who are dating for 3 to 4 years, still having sex with each other, and not really delving deep into those important conversations. And so, but anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but with that,
No, you good.
um, with your son, you mentioned he has mental illness as well. He was diagnosed with mental illness as at the age of 7. So what was that like for you? What was that like for your relationship? Receiving that diagnosis, and then now you're sitting there
Right.
faced with this thing of like, oh my goodness, my son is like me, which great. I want him to be like me, but in only so many ways.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, let me clarify. My youngest son with my ex-wife, he's in
Hmm.
Memphis, have joint
Okay.
custody. My older son, he's from a different
Okay,
relationship.
got you.
So when he was diagnosed with it, and this is where I made a mistake. I chose the wrong woman to have a kid
Hmm.
with because I didn't take into account that her family was absolute
Hmm.
losers. All it did was cause me discontent in raising my son all his life.
Mm.
The people would try to give him drugs. The people would pull guns on him when I wasn't around.
Wow.
All that kind of stuff till I got custody of him. So that's the thing too. When you talk about having kids, you not just you got to be careful who you're exposing that child to in terms of that person's
Yeah.
family. Even if you think that person is great, even if they can just do everything and just the greatest person, you don't get along with their family, you're gonna have problems. So it's too much focus in our society on coupling,
Yeah.
getting married, settling down. Why? I guess I just did it different. I guess I'm different because I was married, not young, but I've done all that. So that's not where my head is at
Hmm.
anymore. And I have to understand too, that plays a big role into my role as a father, raising a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old and having three stepkids who are grown because my stage of life influence is what I impart to them.
Yeah.
And that's one thing too about parenting people. And I learned this as looking back at my relationship with my father, which was very abusive, emotionally abusive. Um, I had to look at this stage of life he was in at the time. What was he going through at the time? So we have to do more of that and put that more into to what we take into our role as a parent. Um, depending on state, my rules are things that I may tell my kids may change based on what I'm going through in life. I may tell kids, you know what, help an old lady cross the street every
Hmm.
day. You might catch me on a bad day. I might say, let that old lady fend for herself. But as parents, we got to give ourselves room to be
Yeah.
human, and we don't. But we have to have some kind of standard to where we adhere to, especially with what's going on with our kids nowadays. Because I'm just afraid. I think these kids nowadays are
Yeah.
soft. I think Gen Xers like me went too far in the other
Yeah.
direction because we know how we were raised. So we tried to make sure we didn't do the things we didn't like. So we ended up way up here instead of right
Yeah.
here. So that's something that'll need to be corrected. But wow, you have kids, somebody. I don't know. I just don't know what to say about people anymore because I don't think people are really at the point until they deal with their mental emotional health where they can look at themselves and scrutinize themselves and actually fix the issue. Because the hardest thing about to me in my journey about becoming a better parent, because I was always a good parent, but I'm a better parent now, was that part where I had to be introspective and look at myself and do things. So especially as far as being a father, because we don't get
Yeah.
credit. You saw how Mother's Day just
Yeah.
passed. Father's Day, you can get in anywhere you
Yep.
want to. I mean, it's just until we have some parity in parenting and in fatherhood and motherhood, then things gonna continue to kind of be bad, and especially in our communities where I love single mothers. I do a tremendous job, but it's not a job you were supposed to
Yeah.
do. It's not a job you had to do. It's not natural.
Yeah.
It's not in the natural order of things. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, if I offend somebody, but a child's supposed to have a mother and a father.
Yeah. No.
If it's got two male parents, I don't care. That don't even bother me. But to choose to raise your child on your own out of some because you don't like the guy or some stupid reason, man, that's abusive to me.
Yeah.
Because you deny a child a father.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking about the women that are doing it. Because most of these women out here, they're not doing it. They're just trying to
Yeah.
make it. And men, we got to do better too. We got to step up and be there and be accountable and work hard and try to be examples for these kids. A man can't lead. A man can only lead by example. Pretty words will get you so far. So we have to reconfigure manhood, and everybody has to decide what that means for them. I think that women need to look at manhood as far as what that may mean to them. Everybody needs to have their own idea, their own notion, and follow that. But as long as we keep having these Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B's filling these women's head with all this mess, and us men listening to all the wrong stuff and not being right with God and not being right in the spirit and not being right in therapy and not being right, It's gonna make being a father real, real hard.
Yeah, I think society has played this huge, this has done this thing where it's easy to, pin women and men against each other, and then create
Right,
this false mentality of for women of independence is this. It was always the man that was holding me back and holding me down. That's the why I couldn't be successful or I wasn't able to do any of these things. And then men have this
right,
fight for women where it's where it's if she didn't know her role, she didn't do this, and it's her fault that our relationship failed, and she was doing these things, and again we're pinning each other, we're making each other the enemy, and very few times are we ever actually coming together again, as I mentioned, to have those hard conversations. And I wanted to ask you, so when you're raising a son, and you got 19 and 14, but with your two boys in particular, when it comes to them finding a relation, getting in a relationship in the future, finding a spouse, what are some things that you talk to them about that they should look for, and do you teach them some of these, like, hey, you need to have these hard conversations, especially early on, not to scare this person away, but just to kind of let them know what your beliefs are, where you stand with a lot of these things, so it's not it's not a surprise 3 years later down the
right,
line, and they're like, what do you mean this is what you believe? I never knew that.
right. What I pretty much tell them, and them being relatively young, especially my 19-year-old, is take your time. Don't worry about a relationship right now. Relationships are not
Mm,
important. Date different women.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? Get to know different people. Travel, do things. This is your time to do it. That being settled down with one person is not for you right now. That's not just because what's going to happen is you're going to get married young. You get married young. You divorce by the time you're 30. You're raising kids in your 30s, and then 40, you're trying to do it all over again because you rushed out in there into a relationship thinking this is not the farm days where people got married at 13 or
mm.
14. It's too many options now.
Yeah,
It's too many options as far as people. I mean, we literally have more options, especially as men. So why rush? Why rush into a relationship? Why rush into a commitment? Take your time. Every woman is not worthy of you committing
yeah,
to. You have to keep that in mind too. You have to find a woman that is worthy of where you're trying to go with who you are and what you want to be. If you're up here and you have ambition and you got a woman that and you talk to a woman that doesn't have any or can't support yours, you wasting your
yeah.
time.
Well, I was married at 19. What was that, 19? Yeah, I was
Mm-hmm.
19, and then like 2 months later, I turned 20, and my wife was 19 or 18, turning 19, and we were high school sweethearts, and I tell people, I was very fortunate, very blessed. The Lord was in me and living in me, and I may not have been had my commitment to him as much as I should have back then. But fortunate for me and my wife,
Right.
we had she had her parents and I had my parents, who were both devout Christians and believers, that were able to help us, guide us along the way, and just kind of drop little nuggets, little seeds every once in a while to let us know to stay on the right track. And this year for me and my
Right.
wife will be 10 years. And I
Good.
thank you. And
Congratulations.
I do turn 30 in November, and we have two beautiful daughters, and I want two more. I want two more kids, maybe three. Two boys is my hope, is my prayer. And I tell people nowadays, well, especially younger soldiers now who are 19, 20, I tell them, hey, I don't encourage you, I don't recommend you get married just because I did, doesn't mean you should strive to do the same thing, because as I said, like you have to you have to know or try to figure out who you're marrying. And as you mentioned,
Right.
relationships are going to come and go, especially when you're young. And so
Yeah.
as the society has changed, it's not really prevalent for young people to find this person, say I really love this person, and then get married, and then have the willpower to stick it out together, through thick and thin. Those words that
Right.
we say at the
Right.
altar, unfortunately, don't hold a lot of weight anymore for a lot of people when they get married. They're just words being said so they can hurry up and quickly get to the bedroom and continue what they were doing in the first place. And it's like,
Right. And yeah, and a lot of people don't realize you're once you become a parent, that trumps your
yeah,
marriage. Your marriage can come and go. Your
yeah,
kids can't. So I guess because I think like the dumbest thing, one of the dumbest things you can do is stay together for the kids. If you do that, you are guaranteeing your kids will be screwed up and
Yeah.
resent you because your kids know when your relationship is over before
Yeah.
you do because they see everything. It don't matter if they one, two, or three, they see everything. They'll come back and tell you some years later. But if you ever think I'm gonna stay together for the kids until the kids get out of high school, why make them miserable? Why make yourself miserable? Don't do that. Don't do that. It never works staying together for the kids. That's the worst thing you do because you will damage those kids
Hmm.
irreparably by staying in an unhappy
We
marriage.
have we
That will not hold a relationship
we have
together.
to teach our kids and educate our kids what a healthy relationship looks like. And I
Right.
was talking to a previous guest, and me and him were having this conversation where I mentioned to him that there are times where my oldest will see me and my wife argue sometimes, and these are not like deep arguments where she's yelling, I'm yelling, whatever the case might be, but our voices, our heart rates might be elevated, our voices might be elevated just slightly, but where she's seeing these arguments, but then she's also seeing us make up, and come together and say, I am
Right.
sorry, I do apologize for, if I what I said or what I did, whatever the case might be, but still coming back together to say, okay, this is what reconciliation looks like. They may be able to differ in opinions and whatever the case might be, they're able to come back together. And when children see that, when children see their parents, in friction, if you will, but then they see them come back together in love, they're like, okay, got it. I have a picture of what
Right.
right looks like, and what it means to see, my mom take acknowledgement of like, okay, she was wrong. My dad to take acknowledgement and say, okay, he was wrong in this situation, but I know what love looks like. And when it comes together and they bring me in there and say, hey, it doesn't change how we feel for you, how we feel about you.
Right.
Mom and dad may argue sometimes, but it doesn't mean we don't love each other anymore, right? We still love each other. We just
Yeah.
sometimes adults going to argue, and as you get older, you'll experience this yourself. You'll argue with people. It doesn't mean you like them or love them less. It just means, hey, you guys are trying to figure some things out. And so, excuse
Right.
me. So it's really, like I said, it's just what work are we willing to put into our relationship, and then also our kids. The
Right.
work that you're willing to put in is
Right.
is important. If you're not willing to put in the work, then you shouldn't have kids. You shouldn't be in a relationship.
Right. And also in terms of a relationship, you have no one to walk
Hmm.
away to. Once that relationship started impacting your ability to raise your children, then the relationship is now an albatross and needs to be jettisoned. To me, the only relationship in life that you really can't walk away from is your
Yeah.
child. Other than that, I don't love anyone I can't walk
Yeah.
away from. That's just what going through divorce and the stuff I've been through has taught me.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's my stage of life. That's my narrative. That's
Yeah.
my story. But either way, I remain a
Yeah.
good father. My kid calls me, I strap what I'm doing. That's all that's important because as men, all our narratives are going to look different. Some of us are going to have good marriages, some of us are not. Some of us are going to settle down, some of us are not. Some of us like football, some of us do not. But we're all men. So we need to find those things that unify us, that cause cohesion, that cause collaboration, and focus on them under the guise of being good fathers for
Yeah.
all. I'm more of than my dad. See, when my kids friends with me, I have to act as their dad. We don't all the it's just like driving. You don't just drive for yourself. You drive for the person
Hmm.
next to you. Same with parenting. Same with parenting. So I think if we can put more of an emphasis on fatherhood and get people to respect fatherhood by being better fathers, I think that'll go a long way. I think there's too much emphasis on coupling. I think that's harmful. I think that's an albatross in itself. But it just depends on what you want to be. If you want to be a parent first, you'll be a parent first. If you want to be you want to hop the club first, you'll hop the club first. It doesn't matter what you want to do. But at the end of the day, your choices will have repercussions and or consequences. So you need to be ready to deal with them.
I agree.
But being a father is the most exhausting thing in the world. But I swear, I have more fun being a father than
Uh,
anything.
I agree with you. I tell people, you can't get that missed time back. You can't get it back. Time is always
Right.
moving forward, and at one point, I don't know when that point happens for some people. I know when it happened for myself. It was when I turned 28, and the realization set in for me that I was like, oh, that like we are on a time limit, if you will, right? And you know, I
Right.
can't get back that time or that time that I missed or those opportunities missed. I can't get those back, And so it really set in for me, and I kind of put it in hyperdrive and said, "All right, cool. What is it? How do I correct myself? How do I correct this direction, the path that I'm going on, and to move correctly in the future?" But you know, guys, hey, listen. I think it's important, that you being a dad is the best thing in life. I've tell people, if you've listened to
Right.
Mediocre Dads before, you've heard me say this before. When I was 17 years old, I had the goal in the back of my mind that I didn't tell anybody about because it sounded ridiculous as a 17-year-old was the thing I want to do, the thing I want to be is the best dad that I can be. That's what I wanted.
I
And,
was the same
and
way.
you know,
I
and
was the same way.
at 17 years old, you can't tell people, "Hey, what's your goals?" To be the best dad. What do you mean to be the best? Are you going to be a dad anytime soon? No, you know what I mean? Like, but that was what it was, and
Yeah.
for me, that's what it meant. It was so important to be a great dad. Being adopted at a young age, and being blessed with adopted parents who love me, and I call who I call my parents, but still knowing in the back of my mind that there were parents out there who gave birth to me, and did not they maybe they didn't want they wanted something to do with me, but they didn't fight hard enough, or they didn't try hard enough to be a part of my life. With that being said,
Right.
being a part of your child's life is important. And, you know, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, inter-race ethnicity here, right? Whatever you are, being a
Mhm.
dad does not mean something different. It just means presence. If I had to relate it to one
Right.
word, it means presence. And
And
yeah,
engagement.
is if I tell you, even if you're tired, like I come home from work. And I'll give you an example right now. I'm on a 24-hour shift. I have my soldier holding the desk down in the military. My military folks know what I mean when I say that. He's holding the desk down right now. And I
Mhm.
came back home to have this interview with you, and I'm gonna after this, I'm gonna go, spend some time with the kids, help my wife put them to bed, and I'm gonna go right back to work and sit at the desk until 9 o'clock in the morning, and whatever the case might be. But
Mhm.
while I'm here, I'm still gonna give them that time. I may be tired, but it
Right.
doesn't mean they don't get none of that time, right? Because it would be really easy for me to say home I'm tired and then watch the NBA finals.
Right. It's
Yeah,
not
you know what I'm saying?
engaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, going over on time, but hey, listen, I'm Q. That is George. Hey, George, before we go, do you have anything else you would like to say? Any piece of advice, any wisdom, where people can find you before we log off here?
All right. You can find me on Facebook under George P. Brooks. You can reach me and my nonprofit Mendo Association at 214-675-1177. I do public speaking and life coaching. I'm also an advocate for fatherhood. If someone has a case or an issue where they need an advocate, they can call me at 214-675-1177. Or you can email me at gbrooks@medaassociation.org. And I just want to say to all the fathers out there, keep doing your best, do your best, put your child first, and it'll pay off. Just do the right thing. Do the right
Absolutely.
thing. Just try to be the best father you can, despite the circumstances, despite who's against you. It's you and your child, and damn everybody
There we go.
else. If it come down to that, it come down to it because I've been there. That's all I got to
Absolutely.
say.
Hey, George, thank you, guys. Hey, thank you for joining us for another episode of Mediocre Dads. I am your host, Quan. I go by Q, where being mediocre is a choice, and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. Mediocre Dads out.